Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our virtual farm tour. This afternoon, we're going to go out to the Corry family farms, and they live just outside of Dayton, Ohio. So we got Craig there, and we've got his cows. So we're going to spend, about 45 minutes with them. So what we'll do is we'll spend the first 20 minutes or so checking out the cows and learning a little bit more about the farm, and then we'll spend that last 20 to 25 minutes answering some questions. So it sounds like Craig's ready to talk, and the cows are talking over there as well. So we'll turn it over to Craig.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our farm. My name is Craig Corry, and thanks again for coming out on a beautiful day. Partly sunny, a few clouds in the sky. It's a nice cool day here on the farm, and it's a good day to be a cow. We'll tell you a little bit about our farm first. Our total farm operation is about 500 acres. Some of you may wonder how big an acre is. An acre is about the size of a football field. Most of you are familiar with that. So that's about how big our farm is. On the farm, we raise corn, soybeans, wheat, and hay, of course, for the pasture, for the cow. And on this farm, people wonder why do we raise cows? Well, on our farm, if you see in the background, there are some hills, and parts of the farm has flat land, so we raise the crops on the flat land. And then we raise grass for the cows on the parts of the farm where the soil might erode. We want to conserve the topsoil and keep it in place. So our way of harvesting that grass is to keep some cows. These cows that we have up here close today are about 35. They're called brood cows, or you might call them mother cows. They live here the year round. A year in the life of one of these cows would be to have a calf in the spring, March, or maybe April or May. And then that calf will nurse the cow's milk all summer long. And in the fall then, when the calves are big enough to eat on their own and eat their own feed and really grow faster than they could just on the cow's milk, the calves are separated. We feed them separately on out to market weight. The cows are going to get ready to have a calf next spring. They'll stay here for 10, 12, 13, 14 years, and then we replace with other cows. As far as what they eat, we gave them some hay to bring them up close to the camera so you could see. Most of the time, they'll eat the green grass of the pastures that are behind us. We have to take good care of them. They get a physical exam by our local veterinarian every fall. If they get sick, sometimes we have to give them a shot, but all in all, they're very healthy. They get plenty of feed in the winter. They get plenty of shelter. If they're kept dry and out of the wind, they don't seem to mind cold weather at all. They're in good shape. If the weather gets really cold, we even give them a little extra feed, a little bit of extra energy, just so that they can tolerate that cold weather. They get salt in a mineral mix. They enjoy that. Cows like to lick salt blocks. They need minerals to grow strong, keep good health. So if you see in the background, that little thing with the red top down there has a tub in it, and it has granular salt. I'll show you what some looks like in a little bit, a mineral mix. They are pretty much free to go wherever they like. We use a practice called rotational grazing, which means that of all the pasture that we have, we divide it up with fence into, instead of letting them have the whole area to roam, like maybe the wide open ranges out west. The grass grows better if we divide it up into smaller areas, and we let them eat one part of the pasture down. When the grass gets short, then we move them to a different section, and they get better grass, and it keeps them growing really good. Some of them are pretty friendly. They come up to the barn when we call them, and I've been asked before, some of you have heard pig calling contests. And I've been asked, well, how do you call the cows? We just say, come here, cows. That's all we do. Some of them have names. This one here is named Bridget. all of our cows have ear tags because if they do look a lot alike, it's hard for some of us to tell them apart. And from a distance, we can see which cow is which by looking at their ear tag number. And that's how we keep records on them to tell whether they had a boy calf or a girl calf every year, keep track of when they were born, how old they are, and that sort of thing. Keep track of their records as far as their health and any medicine that they might need. But they're this time of year, it's getting close to fall. Their hair is starting to grow back. They're starting to get a hair coat that'll protect them from the ice and snow in the winter. And they look a little more fuzzy, maybe a little fatter than normal, but they are very, very, very happy. On a day like today, it's a really good day to be a cow. Campbell, is there anything I should add before we start getting questions about the cows?
Sure, I think that's all pretty good. You did a great job of explaining kind of what the daily life of a cow is like and how you take care of them. So let's go around and we'll take a couple questions now before we move. If we want to start with Bellefontaine, it looks like Burn Union maybe had some technical problems maybe. Bellefontaine, do you guys have any questions? If you do, wave at us and we'll unmute you. All right, you have the floor.
Hi. Hi. How many cows you got? Ow.
Question was,
How many
Craig,
cows?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. In this herd, there are about 35. As far as the state of Ohio goes, that's probably pretty close to the average herd size in Ohio, maybe a little bit bigger.
Yeah. So the average herd size in Ohio is actually 17. So, you guys are a little bit bigger, but still it's a relatively small herd size on a national level, but it's still probably plenty of work to keep you busy. All right, and it looks like we have a question in the chat. Why do people like cows to take medicine?
Why do they like cows to take medicine?
Yeah, so why do you like giving your cows medicine?
Well, they don't get medicine unless they need it, and they only get it if they're sick, just like us.
Sure.
And they rarely will get sick. But for example, in the summer, flies, maybe you see some flies around today. Flies will irritate. They get in their eyes, and they can make their eye water. And cows can get what's called pink eye, and people can also get that as well. And if most of us have maybe had a irritated eye at one time, you can treat it with an antibiotic or a medicine to make it better. We don't want our cows to go blind, so we got to take care of them. We do what we can to control flies, and that's one reason they swat their tails all the time, to keep flies away. That's just an instinct for them. So it's easy. It's really easy to control, but that's part of my job in the summer, to walk around and look at the cows and get them to come up close to the barn. And we check for things like that might be wrong. They can get a irritation. Maybe they step on a rock or something in the field that makes their foot sore, and we have to wash it and clean it up a little bit and keep them healthy.
Sure. All right. Let's take maybe another question. Burn Union, you guys got any questions for Craig?
Do you guys have any questions? What? Do you have any questions? No. No? How about you, David?
Beef. What I love beef.
I don't think we have any right now.
All right. Well, we can come back to you if you guys have any. Make sure you can just throw them right in the chat as we're going along. So, Craig, I think maybe we could. Are you going to show them what you feed your cows at the next stop?
Yep, I'll move over there.
Okay. So while we're heading over there, Craig explained that these are the mama cows, and they're having baby calves and with their mothers for usually the entire summer, 6 to 8 months, and then they wean them off, and then they'll come over here and they'll put them into another group where they can take care of them. That way the mama cows can have another cow. Craig and his family do a lot of different aspects of the beef community, so they raise them up all the way through. And some farms are very specialized where they'll just have those mama cows and calves, or some will just take those queen calves and then feed them. So it looks like Craig's going to feed these guys up a little bit, keep them close and social. So, so Craig, what are we feeding to these guys right now?
Well, I'm just giving them a little bit of corn. We'll take a close look at what some corn looks like. They also like some hay. But they're in an area where it's pretty clean for them. They have good solid footing. These are calves that came from the cows that we just looked at.
Sure. Very cool. And how much would you estimate these guys are weighing right now, Craig?
Okay, when they're born, they would weigh about, let's say maybe 70 to 80, maybe 90 pounds. And they grow pretty fast. They'll gain 2 or 3 pounds a day. Most of these calves now probably weigh about 400 pounds.
Okay.
And they will, they'll be fed separately. And to get them to grow fast, they'll need a lot of corn. We give them some protein because protein builds muscle, vitamins and minerals for their bones and their skeleton, their teeth, and make sure they get the best of nutrition. They have a dry place, warm place in the winter. They can come inside, they can go outside if they like, and we keep the pens clean for them so that the object is to make them feel good, keep them healthy, and they'll grow fast and grow well, make good beef. We've got some samples of some of the things that they eat, and sometimes we can give this to our cows as well. You guys all know what this is. That's an ear of corn, and a lot of you go past the fields on the roads these days. This time of year, farmers are going to be starting to harvest our corn pretty soon. We have a combine harvester that harvests ours. So that's what it looks like on the plant when the husk's open and it produces an ear. And then what the machine will do is to take these kernels of corn and take them off the cob like that, and then you get corn. So we have another machine that will take the corn, and cows will eat corn like this, but sometimes they like it maybe to be ground and cracked a little bit. So we have a different machine that will do that, and that makes it a little easier maybe for them to chew and digest. And out west, some of the places they have it where they actually make cornflakes out of it. So it's almost like what we'd eat for cereal. It'll look a lot like cornflakes. But here in Ohio, most of the places that feed cattle, we just grind it and crack it a little bit. Some of you may know what these are. These are soybeans, these little round guys. And so soybeans are being harvested this time of year. And the combine takes them out of the pods and off the plant. And then we collect these soybeans like this. The soybeans are nice because they're high in protein. So when we deliver our soybeans to the grain elevators, they get sold to and moved to a place that makes the protein meal. And then they make the soybeans into these pellets that the cattle really like, and we mix them in with some corn. So the cows get a lot of energy from their corn and carbohydrates to make them grow, and then the protein helps them build muscle and adds vitamins and minerals as well. So that's a little bit about what these guys here will eat. They also get some of this stuff that we put in a feeder, and the cows have access to this. And some of you think, well, that looks like sand, but it is a mixture of some calcium and phosphorus That's minerals and vitamins that a cow's tongue is really rough. So when she licks into some of this stuff, just enough of it sticks to her tongue that they just eat a little bit of that every day, and that supplies them with their minerals and their vitamins that they need to make a complete feed. And of course, we got a bale of hay. A lot of farmers that have cattle, a lot of them make hay. So this hay happens to be in a square bale, but sometimes they make it in the big round bales. Sometimes they just chop it loose, and it can be in big square bales, but it's all hay.
Very good.
So, anybody have any questions about the feed?
Sure. So, Craig, do you change their diet as they're growing up any?
Yes. Of course, young animals will need more protein in their diet. So we have to, we just adjust maybe how much protein mix that we put in a batch of feed. And we adjust that because when they're younger, they do need a little more protein, just like a young person growing up need plenty of protein to grow right.
Sure. Very good. All right, we've got a question from Burn Union. I think they were changing classrooms when you talked about the ear tags earlier. So can you talk about, what you use those ear tags for?
The ear tags are for the identification, just so we can tell one cow from another. We do have a code to the numbers. Sometimes we use the first digit. Most of our cows have 2 numbers on their tag. So the first number might be an indication to us of the year it was born. So like tag number 81 that I was scratching her back, she was born in 2008. The 8 meant that she was born in 2008. So this year she's almost 9 years old.
Pretty good. Pretty good. All right, another question about the tags. Do you reuse the tags? Do the tags go to the next owner? So when you sell a calf or a cow to another owner, does that owner use them that you've sold that cow or calf?
Okay, that's a good question. They could use that number tag if they would like. They could change and use a different number. Maybe another person might have they might like a different color tag. Tags can be bought in all shapes and sizes and colors, and they can reuse the same hole that tag was in. It's really no different than getting an earring, and they can choose to use a tag of their liking at that time.
Sure. All right, and then we got a question from Bell Fountain. So, how much money does it take to raise a calf to adulthood? So,
From calf to adulthood.
Yeah.
All right. You guys might think about this a little bit. What's the biggest cost in raising an animal? It's probably in their feed. So depending on what corn price is per bushel, it costs us some money to make hay. It costs us money to plant a field of corn, an acre, and an acre of soybeans. It costs money to buy the mineral. It depends a little bit on some of the ingredients that we supply ourselves. We can probably raise them maybe a little cheaper than we can buy them, but it can be several $100s for a calf to have to buy everything. Probably what it takes a lot of, it's hard to put a value on our labor or on our work, because we have to work pretty hard to take care of them every day. And when we sell them, I guess that's the paycheck we get for all the time we spent raising them.
Sure. All right, Craig. So we got a question about that last stage. So when let's maybe talk about you're feeding these calves right now. How long will you feed them, and when is market weight? And maybe how
Okay,
much
these guys behind us, their feed will, as they grow, we'll give them more feed. They will be ready to go to market probably in the middle of next summer, depending on how big they are now and how fast they grow. A calf can gain 2.5 to 3 pounds per day. So depending on the winter weather, depending on what they're fed, If you feed a lot of hay, they don't grow very fast on mostly hay. So they need energy and protein to make them grow faster. And a bigger calf that is really doing well, they will get closer to 3 pounds per day. So kids that take animals to the fair, they're about this size now. And if their fair is in July or August of next summer, that's when they want them to be about 1,100, 1,200 pounds, 1,300 pounds. So they gain weight pretty fast. That's when most of these will be ready to go to market.
Sure. All right, so we got a question. I guess let's talk about, okay, it's time to go to market. Where do you guys take your cattle to market, and kind of what's that process look like when, you know, that it is that time to go to harvest?
All right. They don't all get to go to market on the same time because they grow at different rates. They reach market weight at different times. So beginning in sometime in June, we start looking at the cattle and identifying those. They all have an ear tag, so we can track their history on the farm and their genetics, their pedigree, their family history. So we'll look at them and decide which ones are the biggest and closest to go to market. And then we take maybe 5 or 6 a week as they get ready to a stockyards in the area. And then they're sold there to the buyers that will take them to the processing plants.
Sure. Sure. So, you know, those fed steers or heifers, you know, they've been around for, 16, 18 months usually.
Yep.
And time to
Right.
go. So
Yes.
you guys take them to stockyards, and then they are sent to a processing plant. That's where they're harvested. And
Yes.
those people there do a ton of work to keep all of our meat safe and, cut it up into different cuts. And that's how we get beef in the grocery store or.
That's right.
So, all right, so we got a question, Craig, about grass-fed beef. So why are grass-fed beef products more expensive than the traditional grain-fed?
Okay, I didn't know. I've never really compared the cost. So if they are more expensive, that is a part of the market that a lot of people have taken interest in. Grass-fed beef is going to take a little longer to get to weight, because if they only eat grass, they can't gain weight as fast as if they get corn and protein meal. That may have a lot to do with it. There are some people that will try to market maybe grass-fed beef as somehow being nutritionally different or better. We haven't seen any of that in anything we've looked at, but sometimes people are willing to pay maybe more for something that if they think it's a little different. But there are people that like it and use it as a product. So I don't have too many producers near us that I know of that are doing that, but that's part of what they're doing is their marketing program.
Sure. So I can give a little bit more insight into it. Like Craig said, it takes a lot more time to get those grass-fed animals to weight, because not only they're not eating corn and soybeans and different minerals, they're not having that balanced diet. They're eating just grass. And like Craig said, he had to feed hay to get his cows up for them to come close. Otherwise, they're out grazing and kind of walking around. So they've really got to work for their food. So
That's right.
Burning a lot of that energy instead of converting that to muscle and fat. So it takes a lot more time. Craig's, operation, it's about 16 to 18 months to get an animal ready for market. With grass-fed, it could be almost 2 years by the time it's all said and done sometimes. So that's one of the main reasons why. It's just more time, and you're gonna have to put more put costs. You're gonna have the vet out there a couple more times, and like Craig said, you're gonna have some labor in them as well. So that's the main reason.
That's right. One thing, Campbell, we forgot to point out, I was going to mention at the beginning, was we don't know how many of our watchers today know this, but you could say a cow has 4 stomachs. How many stomachs do we have? We have 1. How many does a pig have? 1. How about your dog or your cat? one. A cow can eat different things than an animal that only has one stomach. A horse, you could probably say two, but a horse could live and probably survive just eating hay and pasture. But if it's going to be saddled and ridden and worked and gets much exercise, it'll have to have some extra feed and some energy to keep it in good body condition and keep it healthy. Where a cow can live and survive out on some pretty rough and rugged territory in parts of the United States, it takes 20 or 25 acres just to give enough feed for the cow through the grazing season. Whereas here in Ohio, we get a lot more rain and we have better grass, so we don't have that kind of a requirement. But that's one of the advantages of a cow. They can provide food, milk. They're a source of products that we need and feed, that they can survive in parts of the world and parts of the area in a climate that we cannot raise corn or soybeans or other products for us to eat.
Sure. Yeah, that's a very good point. So I don't know if you guys do any byproducts in your feed, Craig. Do you guys use any distillers grains or things like that?
We have not. We've looked into it. I do have access to some of those things. Distillers grain, for those of you that are watching, distillers grains are, if we take corn, a lot can be done with a bushel of corn, and corn can be taken to a ethanol plant, and they can get the sugar and some of the carbohydrates out of a kernel of corn and make ethanol to mix in with gasoline as fuel for vehicles that we drive, and it helps them put out less pollution and run cleaner and cooler in the engine. But then the part of the kernel that's left over after they take the sugar and the alcohol out of it, that makes a good feed. So when Campbell mentions distillers grains, that's what he's talking about. And cattle will really enjoy that stuff. They like it. A lot of places feed it and mix it into their feed rations. We just haven't done that much here. You need to use a certain amount. We don't really have a big enough feeding operation to get at a large scale into that yet.
Sure. No, absolutely. Like Craig said, with the four stomachs, cattle can eat a lot of different things and have a very balanced diet, to grow and make lean beef. So, all right, let's take a couple more questions. All right, does anyone from Bell Fountain have another question? Throw your hand up if you got one. All right, what about Hebron Elementary? You guys have any questions?
Oh, we're unmuted. If cows have four stomachs and can eat all kinds of things, what about goats? Are they the same?
All right, Craig,
Do the kids know the answer to that one? Do any of the kids know?
Do any of the kids know? He wants to know. Can you hear him? They said no.
They said no. Okay. Goats have four stomachs. How about sheep? Sheep have four
We have a
stomachs.
sheep farmer here. Gunner, do sheep? What about sheep stomachs? Gunner says one stomach.
They have four.
Sheep has four stomachs. You're gonna have to go home and tell Dad that. Find what you learn.
Now remember, when we say though that they have four stomachs, they're not. They are separate. They are separate compartments, and they do different things. So it's an easy way to remember that you can say a cow has four stomachs. Really, only one of them is very close to ours, but they do have four digestion compartments, and they do different things, and that's really what helps them eat so many different varieties of food. And cattle are natural forage eaters. If it's green and growing on the ground, they will, in the woods, a lot of them, they'll reach up and they like certain kinds of tree leaves. So if it's a green growing plant, the cows will go out of their way. They really like it. But if they have a choice between green grass and a mouthful of corn, even they probably prefer the corn. That's like dessert to them.
Sure. So Craig, let's talk maybe a little bit about how you handle the cows. I know we were with your cows earlier, and they they're pretty docile. What do you do when it comes time to, you said you maybe got to give a shot every once in a while, or you got to move them from one place to the other? The big animals, how do you move them around and stay safe?
Yeah, the cows, a herd of cows like this that has been on the farm for a long time. I know you see things in the TV and on the Western movies about a cattle drive and all that. Ours are almost so tame now. They're used to being around here, so they know if we open a gate, we don't hardly have to coax them through it. They seem to know that it's time for them to move, and they know if they're moving, generally they're going to some fresh grass, and they like that. So lots of times they will move themselves. Cows are curious. That's why they get out sometimes. If they see an opening in the fence or an opening in a gate, they're naturally curious to see where it goes. And so they'll go for a stroll, maybe in places we don't always want them to go. If we do have to give one some medical treatment, if we want to check them out pretty close and we got them to get them to stand still, we have an area in the barn where it narrows into like a narrow hallway, maybe the width of your closet or something like that. It's wide enough for a cow to walk through in single file. And we have to, sometimes these have been, a lot of these have been shown at cattle shows. So we can put a halter like a horse bridle around their head and they'll stand still. But we have a gate that they put their head through and it closes on them. Just they know that it stands still, and they're very easy to work with. If they get pink eye, we have to maybe put some lotion or something in their eye to help them out. And we don't really use we don't use a stick or anything. We don't yell or scream at them or anything. They're pretty much able. They know what they're supposed to do, and they cooperate with us.
Sure, that's a good question. All right, guys, so we've got about 10 minutes left. So if you have a question, throw your hand up or throw it in the chat. Otherwise, I have a couple more for Craig while you guys are putting those together. You got a question over there at who we have here? Burn Union. You guys got any questions?
Yeah. What is it? He's waiting for your egg.
How much do the cows eat?
How much do the cows eat?
Sure.
All right, that's a good question. And then I'll ask you guys a question too. How much can a cow eat? All right, this is a bale of hay right here. That bale of hay probably weighs about 60 pounds. So if a cow was really hungry and we gave her all of that hay she would want, she would probably eat, those cows over there would probably eat half of that bale of hay in one day. They would probably eat that much hay in a day, because if you watch them outside, a lot of them are laying down now, but cows out on pasture, what do they do all day long? They walk around and eat grass. So it'd be kind of hard to get an accurate weight on that. But if we put one of them here up close to the barn and just let her eat hay, she could eat a half of a bale of hay a day. So the amount of feed, when these calves really get big, as far as the ground feed, they will, that's a 5-gallon bucket. And if it had full of feed or corn in it, it would weigh maybe 25 pounds. So when they get close to market weight next summer, they will almost eat a full bucket each one a day. Right now, they're not eating as much. They're smaller and they're younger, and we're not giving them all they want. We don't want them to get too fat too quick. We just want to make sure they're healthy and getting the feed they need for good health and growth. But next summer, they would almost eat a 5-gallon bucket a day. Now, another question I could ask is I'll ask you guys is how much water do they drink a day? The cow is big. She has a big rib cage, and her first digestive stomach, the first of her 4 stomachs on a big cow can hold 30 or 40 or maybe 50 gallons of water. That would be 10 buckets of water. Now, they don't drink that much always a day, but these cows on a hot summer day, they're out in the sun, and when they get near the pond or they can get near our spring, and our cattle have water anytime they want it. They have always access to all the water they want. So if they get thirsty, they usually go over as a group and drink, and they hang out under the shade for a while, and then they go back out in the pasture and eat. And they will drink 5, 10, maybe 15 gallons of water a day. Is what they like.
All right. The question from Burn Union is, how old is a cow when she has her first calf?
Okay, that's a good question too. Most cows will have their first calf when they're about 2 years old. Now, another question is then how long will a cow live? And that depends a lot on the climate and where they live. A cow that lives around here, and we give plenty of really good feed. In a harsh winter can be hard on a cow, even if they have shelter and good places to stay. Really bad weather. Sometimes we've heard about blizzards that come up out west and traps cows. Cows can tolerate some pretty bad weather, but if they're wet and cold for too long and they don't have a place where they can seek really good shelter, it can be tough on them. Most of our cows around here will live till they're 14, 15 years old, something like that.
Sure.
So if they have their first calf when they are 2, usually for us they have 10 or 12 or 13 calves for us while they're on this farm.
Gotcha. That's perfect, because our next question was, how many calves can a cow have in her life? So just kind of depends. You average.
That's pretty close. Now, if you have people that raise sheep, sheep can have twins. Deer in the wild will have twins. Goats sometimes will have twins. So cows occasionally will have a set of twins. I'm thinking back on this farm, we've actually had cows that twice since I've raised cattle have had triplets. They had 3 calves. It doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. It's been a year or 2 since we've had a set of twins, and sometimes there'll be a year will happen when you might have 3 sets of twins all in the same year, and then we've also gone a few years when we haven't had any, and I cannot explain why that happens, but it does.
So Craig, in the spring, that's when you have your calves. Kind of talk about what each day is very different depending on the time of year. Talk about what you got to do to help those mama cows out to have those baby calves.
Yes. Okay, that's a good question. During the calving season, that's a critical time for us. So that means that we'll be checking the cows. Sometimes somebody keeps an eye on them 24 hours a day. We sort of know after we learn the cows, you learn about a cow's behavior. We have some clues as to when they're getting ready to calve. So we watch them very closely, and sometimes we might need to assist the cow having a calf. If she's having trouble pushing the calf out, we sometimes have even had to call our veterinarian, and we have to help the mother have the baby. As soon as the calf is born, usually what we'll do is let the mother lick the calf off, that's good therapy for her. It's a good way to, it helps stimulate the calf to get it breathing good. And that's just sort of the natural way of letting them bond with each other and get off to a good start. The calves, after they're a day or two old, when there are a lot of little baby calves around, we may not be able to tell which calf goes with what cow. So we will give an ear tag to the calf that will help us identify who its mother is. And that way we have to not only check the rest of the herd when they start calving, but then we have to make sure that if the weather gets bad, we have to make sure that the babies are in shelter and that they're in the dry, warm areas of the barn, and that they're healthy themselves. Usually eventually they get big enough where they can take care of themselves. But those 2 months, that's a highly, that's a labor intensive time on the farm for us.
Sure. Oh, cool. We're down to about our last 5 minutes, Craig. So I think some of the students kind of wanted to see the other, side of the farm. So I think we're going to kind of pan the camera around, and if you can just kind of tell us what we're looking at while we're doing that.
Okay.
That's perfect. Probably right about there, Lauren. You can just kind of pan around.
Okay. Right. I don't know if I mentioned, Campbell, that I think at the beginning I forgot to mention that this farm was settled in 1830. So I know for a lot of the kids that's going to seem like a long time ago. 1830, this farm was settled by my great-great-great-grandfather. And the barn in the background then has been remodeled, and we've covered it with metal, and we've kept it up to date as best we can. But that is the only building on the farm that was still built in the 1830s, and it's still in use for us today. The cattle use the bottom part of it for shelter, and then we store a lot of hay and some of our farm machines in the upstairs. And then up here, this area behind me is what we call that's our feeding floor, or our feedlot. And once the calves that we looked at get a little bit bigger, we'll be moving them up here. Those orange things are what we put the feed in to let the calves eat. And there's one of our tractors. The machinery that we use for the cattle is kept in that building there with the open front.
Very good.
Now we might take a look. Remember how the cows. We'll look at the cows here since we've been showing this. We'll take a look at the cow herd again. And where they were all up and eating, and when we were looking at them really close. Look at them now. They've settled back down, and they're just probably chilling, going to chill the rest of the day. Now I don't know if you can see in look at some of their mouths as they move. If you guys can see that. There's one over by the fence. After they eat, a lot of them will sit down and relax, and they have eaten their food. We gave them some corn and some hay, but now is when they really are digesting it, because you've heard of cows that chew their cud. Here's one right here that's doing that. Is that too far away? Can you guys see what she's doing?
Get a little far away.
I don't know if she'll come closer or not. But after they eat, they like to find a place in the shade and sit down and relax and chill, and they'll just move their mouth. So what they're doing is some of the hay that they've eaten and has been in their first stomach, they bring back up their throat and they re-chew it in their mouth and chew it up into smaller pieces, and then they swallow it again, and that's how it goes through their digestive system. As a four-stomach animal can do that, obviously we can't.
For sure. All right, Craig. I think we got 2 questions left, and then we'll wrap up. So the first question is, I know we talked about how many cows you had, but how many total cattle do you have on the farm?
Oh, total cattle on the farm depends on the time of year, because when every cow has a calf, if we have 35 cows and if every cow has a calf, there's 70. Then we may have also cattle still in the feeding pen, so there might be 30 or 50 there. So there are times of the year we have over 100 head, and there are times of the year when we've sold some of the cattle to market, then our numbers go back down.
Sure. Sure. And then the last question is, how do you sell your cows, and, what's the average price usually?
The average price for cattle now, they'll weigh them when they go across the scale. A cow that, say if it weighs 1,000 pounds, or say if it weighs 1,200 pounds, if it's market ready now, market beef is probably $1.05, maybe $1.10 per pound, something like that. So per head, they're probably what, $1,200 or $1,300 a piece.
Sure. Very good. Very good. Well, with that, we're running out of time here. So, just want to thank you, Craig, for inviting me out for having us out to your farm. I think it's been a really nice day out there. I wish I was out there instead of being trapped in the office here. So, thank you guys for joining us here with the Ohio Beef Council. We'll follow up with you after if you have more questions. So, let's say thank you to Craig.
Thanks, guys, for coming. Hope you enjoyed our trip and tour, and we'll see you again.
Bye-bye.
Say thank you.
Bye. Thank you for the field trip.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, guys.
When you start